Welcome, viewer. Before we begin the video, I will read a short pre-prepared statement. The narrator wishes it to be known that although this is a video about a children's television show, this is not a video meant to be viewed by children, as in her very nature to accurately represent some of the points she wishes to make, the use of gratuitous and very naughty language is necessary. Also, I'm going to spoil the f***ing shit out of the first season of Beyblade, so don't watch if you haven't yet been taken in or are too young to handle certain letters of the alphabet arranged in a specific way. I know what you're thinking. You're a grown-up. Why are you making a video about a show for children? Well, there are two reasons. The first is that I wanted a break from whinging about the Scream films, and two, I wanted to talk about something that I loved when I was a kid and can still find entertainment value in today. Beyblade is a Japanese anime of a manga by the same name, which itself was creatively based on a spinning top toy made by a Japanese entertainment company then called Takara Tomy. Beyblade first aired in January of 2001, and almost 18 months later it was exported overseas, given an English dub, and released for kids. I have absolutely no problem in saying that my favourite aspect of Beyblade is the characters. It's not just the characters, it's also the presentation, the animation, the music, but I find the main draw that keeps me coming back is the characters. My analysis of the show will be mostly of the English dub since it's the version I'm most familiar with, but I'll point out significant differences between the English and Japanese versions as and when they appear. The first thing I'll point out is that it's fucking long. 51 20-minute episodes, and that's right, I'm going through them all, but not all at once. Please. There are only so many hours in the day. Nope, instead I've divided the first series into arcs. In this video, which I'll ambitiously call Part 1, I'll tackle the first 7 episodes, which sets up the plot of the series, introduces the main characters, and ends with the Blade Breakers formation. Episode 1 introduces us to our first main character, Tyson, and Beyblading, and the rules of Beyblading, as he leaves a martial arts session with his grandfather to go and battle his friend Andrew, but instead gets caught up in another battle with a kid called Billy. The game goes like this. 2 Beyblades are launched into a Bey's stadium, and through any means, the first Beyblade to stop spinning or be knocked out of the stadium is the loser. If you think it's that simple, then you've clearly never watched it. Actually, several pieces of dialogue, mostly from Kenny, make it seem a hell of a lot more complicated because of a lot of big sciencey words that are thrown at the viewer. This is where the whole cartoon for kids argument can be used to an almost infinite degree. The argument of cartoon for kids is like an everything-proof shield against reasoning and logic. In reality, this is a game of physics. I'm not a physicist by any means, but if 2 Beyblades are launched alongside each other, then surely the strongest launch wins, since it'll spin for the longest. But this is a cartoon for kids, so it's more exaggerated and more complicated. Instead, the Beyblade is seen as more of an extension of the player, as the player can somehow control the Beyblade by giving specific commands, and so a little bit more strategy is brought in. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Tyson wins his match against Billy, and we get a glimpse into his character. He's shown to be a good sport when it comes to winning and complimenting his opponent so their crippling failure doesn't hurt so much. Tyson arrives at his location, but he finds that Andrew has already been beaten by a new player called Carlos, but he's a bad sport who takes the Beyblades of everyone he defeats. Tyson disagrees with this, so he challenges Carlos to a Beyblade match because that's how these characters settle their differences. However, Kenny interrupts, and through the medium of shin kicking, an arrangement is made where Tyson and Carlos's match is delayed until the following afternoon. Here we're introduced to Kenny and Dizzy. Kenny is a self-proclaimed Beyblade expert, and Dizzy is the voice that emerges from his laptop, although he claims that she's a bit beast. We'll get into that later. For now, Dizzy explains that Carlos wins all his matches because his Beyblade is heavier and so is more stable, thus making it very difficult to defeat. So if Tyson wants to win, then he has to figure out how to get his Beyblade to spin 4 times faster, and for those struggling to keep up, we're still pretending like anything in this fucking show has any scientific basis. Because I've got a lot to get through, we'll smash cut to the following afternoon and the battle begins. Tyson has spent the previous night practicing and perfecting an unusual launching technique, hence his roughed up appearance, and that combined with an extended ripcord has successfully made his Beyblade spin 4 times faster. Somehow. Tyson's efforts weren't in vain and he defeats Carlos, but Tyson's problems are only just beginning. Enter Kai. Kai is the leader of a gang called the Blade Sharks, of which Carlos is a member, and they have to be the most unintimidating gang imaginable, but nevertheless they're big stuff around these parts, and Kai asserts his dominance by slapping Carlos to the ground. Tyson is enraged by this behaviour and so challenges Kai to a Beyblade match because that's how they settle their differences in this universe. Before their match, Kai warns Tyson by showing his Beyblade, and it's very pretty because it has a nice picture of a phoenix in the middle of it. But what does that mean? Well, if you're about to battle someone with a picture of an animal in the middle of their Beyblade and your Beyblade doesn't have a picture of an animal in the middle of it, then in the language of Beyblade, it more often than not means that you're about to get your shit ruined. Episode 2 starts and Kai is very quick to smash Tyson's Beyblade into pieces. Humiliated, Tyson retreats into solitude until he's visited by Andrew and Kenny. Andrew gives Tyson some of Kai's backstory. Kai is looking for an ultimate Beyblade which contains the power of ancient beasts that can be called upon in battle to give the player more power. Tyson devises a plan to build the ultimate Beyblade that will defeat Kai. Elsewhere, Carlos is punished by Kai and the rest of the Blade Sharks for losing to Tyson by having his Beyblade destroyed. Back at Tyson's house, the new Beyblade still isn't up to scratch, but that's not the biggest problem the boys are faced with. Kai is told about Kenny and Dizzy and thinking that they might know something about this elusive ultimate Beyblade. The Blade Sharks out and out kidnap Kenny and take Dizzy from him. They tie him up and everything. Tyson and Andrew are told about this from two kids who watched it happen, and so they begin a plan to rescue Kenny. Now I need to talk about Bit Beasts. That thing I mentioned before about ancient beasts living in a Beyblade, that's a Bit Beast. Kai already has one in Dronza, and Tyson is about to get one of his very own. In the previous episode, Tyson's granddad tells him the story of the family sword that encases a powerful spirit known as Dragoon. Tyson visits the sword before he goes to rescue Kenny and asks for help, and in response, the spirit of Dragoon bursts out of the sword and into Tyson's new Beyblade. Bit Beasts are explained in a little bit more detail towards the end of the series, but from what I understand, Bit Beasts are the sacred spirits of mythical beasts that have roamed around since the dawn of time, and now they exist inside Beyblades to aid in combat, which is all fine if we're still doing the whole cartoon for kids thing. But here I ask a question: where did Dizzy come from? What sacred spirit was she? From the way Kenny explains it, he turned on his laptop one day, there was a power surge, and there she was. Actually, Dizzy wasn't in the Japanese version, but a creation for the English dub, probably for exposition talkie-talkie purposes. I'm not saying I don't like Dizzy, she offers a couple of good gags over the course of the series, but what I am saying is that she doesn't make sense from a narrative perspective. I think it would have made more sense if Dizzy was an artificial intelligence created by Kenny to store all of his Beyblade knowledge. It's not unreasonable that he would be able to do something like that, especially given that Dizzy knows just about as much as he does, and her only edge is that she can use the technology that she's trapped in to give a technical perspective on any given situation, like she can analyse Beyblades using the camera and stuff like that. That's all I wanted to say. Tyson, Andrew and co arrive to rescue Kenny and they're faced with Kai. Tyson and Kai begin their rematch because that's how they settle their differences in this universe, and I'm fucking bored of saying that, so I'll just put it up on screen from now on. Luckily, and also unbeknown to him, Tyson has Dragoon on his side, and when it looks like Kai is up to his old tricks, it seems that Tyson's frustration manifests inside his Beyblade and Dragoon appears, as does Dronza. As the two collide, the force of the impact ends the match in a draw. Kai briefly explains the nature of their Bit Beasts, and as he walks away, we see his cracked Beyblade and we realise before Tyson does that he has more power than he thinks. Episode 3 starts and Tyson is shown practicing with Dragoon, and this is the episode where we meet Max. His Beyblade skills far outweigh Tyson's, as it is shown when the two rescue a dog from drowning. Tyson and Kenny go to his father's hobby/Beyblade shop where Tyson and Max have a friendly match, but Tyson loses. This makes him realise that Dragoon isn't enough to guarantee him victory, but there's no time because Mr. Dickinson arrives with some good news. First, Mr. Dickinson is the head of the Beyblade Battle Association and a friend of Max's family, and second, the good news he brings is that there's a local tournament about to take place. Tyson decides to enter since it will most likely lead to another battle with Kai, and Max decides to join too. Tyson and Kenny discuss strategy when it comes to getting Tyson up to scratch for the tournament, and Kenny points out that although Tyson does have Dragoon, he doesn't know how to control the power, so Tyson has a tantrum and Kenny leaves, but Max convinces him to return, just in time to witness Tyson practicing, and then this happens.
I have never seen anything like this! Wow! Oh! Oh, wow!
Huh? Oh, yes, I finally controlled the power of the Dragoon!
Really? Over the course of about 5 minutes? Okay. Episode 4 brings the start of the tournament, of which Tyson, Max and Kenny are all competing. Episode 4 shows us the scale of the Beyblade phenomenon. Unlike the previous 3 episodes where it appeared to be a niche game for kids, it's actually an international sport that's broadcast on TV, and also this episode introduces 3 new regular characters: stadium announcer DJ Jazzman and commentators AJ Topper and Brad Best. Just like Dizzy, Topper and Best were not in the Japanese version and were included in the English dub, and apparently they weren't very well received, which is a shame because I like those two. Yeah, they're probably a bit insignificant to the actual story, but I never found them annoying or distracting. I quite like their commentary. I'll glance over this episode because it basically sets up all the interesting things that happen in the next 3 episodes, but what I really wanted to point out is this. What the fuck is that? Not only would that not work in reality, but you would have thought that a self-proclaimed Beyblade expert would have come up with something better, but it wasn't even his idea. It was Dizzy's. Does she hate him or something? Actually, Tyson gets really mad that Kai defeated Kenny, and I still have no idea why. What did you expect him to do? Let Kenny win? You've met Kai, this is a tournament, he's there to win, as are you, and you know how much he likes winning. So in the end, Kai wins all of his battles, of course, as does Tyson and Max, but at the end of the episode we get a glimpse of a new character and opponent for Tyson, Ray. Episode 5 is called Your Seal of Approval and it's the beginning of the semi-finals. The first pairing is Max versus Kai. Before the match, Max's dad gives him a pendant that belonged to his grandmother as a good luck charm. Round 1, the match begins and Kai wins, showing that Max's new Beyblade and good luck pendant didn't do diddly jack shit. Round 2, and Max launches his Beyblade backwards to somehow use Kai's own power against him, and it works and Max wins. But the plan literally backfires as the force of Kai's attack sends Max's Beyblade hurtling towards him, conveniently breaking his necklace but also revealing the Drasil bit inside. Now Max has his very own Bit Beast with a strong emphasis on defense, but it isn't enough, and Kai wins the third match, sending him to the final. Next day, and it's episode 6, which focuses on Tyson and Ray's semi-final matchup. I really don't like Ray's introduction because it doesn't do his character justice. Honestly, he acts a lot like Kai. He's arrogant and irritating and acts like he doesn't want to be there because the competition is so lame. At least Kai's initial character traits of being a broody misery bollocks remains consistent, but Ray acts like this for all of 1 episode. After that, he shows himself to be a nice guy. Round 1 and the match begins and Ray wins by using his Bit Beast Drigger and a soon-to-be well-known attack, the Tiger Claw. Since Dragoon has been damaged beyond Tyson's means of repair, it looks like Tyson will be knocked out, but just in the nick of time, Kenny arrives with some spare parts and a very important part, which is a new defense ring made from a special indestructible alloy that holds against a wide range of attacks, conveniently including Ray's Tiger Claw attack. Round 2 begins, and given that this episode is called Dragoon Storm and shows Tyson using his Storm attack, then you'd think that this episode reveals the existence of this attack, but Tyson has already used it against Kai. It's possible that Tyson thought the original Storm attack was an emotional response from Dragoon and was just a one-off, but the use of it against Ray shows that Tyson has the ability to call upon it whenever the fuck he feels like it. Don't worry, I'll pull up the everything proof shield. Tyson wins the second round and the score is tied, but Ray forfeits and explains that he's already been defeated, so there's no point in continuing. At this point, you'd be forgiven for thinking that there's every point in continuing because you could still win the third round, Ray, you daft prat. But it's actually a ruse because when Mr. Dickinson confronts him out of Tyson's earshot, Ray explains that he actually quit because he's met someone who can give him a decent challenge and he wants to join the team. But what team? Well, there's still 1 more episode to go. Episode 7 starts and it's the final match of the national tournament between Tyson and Kai. The episode is called 13 Candles because it takes place on Tyson's 13th birthday, which he forgot about because he's been preparing for the final. The first match begins and Tyson wins almost too easily. I suspect Kai's infinite supply of arrogance has bubbled to the surface and he didn't expect much from Tyson, but now he's seen what Tyson is really packing and so the gloves are literally off. And leave them off, Kai. They're fucking hideous. Round 2 begins, and since it went so well for him last time, Tyson brings out his Storm attack, but Kai's not stupid, so unleashes Dronza and blasts Tyson out of the ring, winning the second round. Cards on the table? This is one of my favourite episodes in the first series because I believe that this is the true beginning of the great rivalry between Tyson and Kai. You can definitely make the argument that the rivalry began in the second episode when Kai defeated Tyson and Tyson began obsessing over having another match with him, which they eventually had and it ended in a draw, as well as a damaged Beyblade for Kai. But this time, things are different. I honestly think that Tyson and Kai are just 2 sides of the same coin. They both have the same ambition, but have very different views on the sport. Tyson wants to win, but he also wants to have fun because it's a game after all. And if he does his best and still loses, then he can still be proud of himself. Kai, on the other hand, says that he competes for family honour and not to have fun. They both know how important the championship is to themselves and each other. So with all that in mind, as the third round begins, the score is tied and both players have seen what each other's strengths are. So they both go for the same strategy, which is to throw everything they've got at each other, and the resulting fire-laden tornado that is launched towards the crowd just says it all. The show takes full advantage by using the fantastic theme tune, and that combined with the presentation, also combined with the reactions of Tyson's friends and family in the crowd, come together to create an experience that young people in the early 2000s would describe as awesome. The smoke clears and it looks like their Beyblades have given up and gone home, but really, the collision has caused them to shoot up into the air, but they're still attacking each other. As they fall, Dragoon lands in the dish, but Dronza tips to the wrong side and falls out, losing Kai the match, therefore showing that Kai wasn't overpowered by Tyson, he was just unlucky. Tyson is crowned the winner of the national championships. In the aftermath, Kai laments on his loss, but he's approached by Tyson along with Mr. Dickinson and Ray, where it's revealed that Mr. Dickinson wants Tyson, Kai, Ray and Max to form a team and join the World Beyblading Championships with Kai as the captain. Tyson, Ray and Max are happy to be travelling the world together. Kai, on the other hand, is less enthusiastic but accepts his position as captain, but walking away we see him smile at the thought of being team leader. The episode ends with Tyson, Ray and Max celebrating their announcement to the roaring cheers of the crowd, and thus the Blade Breakers are born. And this part ends. I mentioned earlier that my favourite aspect of this show is the characters, and this series is structured in such a way that each leg of the championship focuses on a specific character, and so they all get equal screen time and a chance to grow. In the next part we'll cover the Asian tournament, which focuses on Ray. See you then.